Yeah. All right. So the Chafetz Chaim is continuing here in the Hakama, and he was building up to this to explain why he's writing the Sefer, like we said the other day. Chafetz Chaim only wrote Sfarim where he saw a need. He didn't write Sfarim, if he had good shiurim to print or something. He only chose to write where there was a need. And therefore, in this Hakdama, you can see that he's building up to that, where now yesterday he explained to us why is it that this mitzvah is so hefker? And he said that all the reasons why people speak Lashon Hara can really boil down to the fact that there is no sefer dedicated to Hilchas Shmiras HaLashon. And therefore, says the Chafetz Chaim, "Alkein ozarti kegever chalotzai in myself." This is how in these halachas, right? He felt there was a need. And therefore, he said he gathered all these halachas to into a sefer. He gathered it from wherever it's spread out in Shas and Poskim, Ubeprat, specifically the Rambam, Asmag, B'Shari Tshuva, Rabbeinu Yonazah. Shehem Hi'irulon Reinai Balachas. They opened up our eyes. They gave us the foundations for these halachas. For Gamli Katyes and Dinim Rimash Matzasi Chuvas Marik. So he also found some halachas in Chuvas Marik. B'Shar Chuvas Hashayochim Lidinzeh. V'chilakti es ha-sefer l'shnei chalakos. Says the Chafetz Chaim, I split the sefer into two parts. Number one is Hilchos Yisurei Lashon, and number two is Hilchos Yisurei Rechulis, the two separate lavin. And he split the sefer on the bottom, and the footnote says, "Ba'em yesh havei dinim b'Hilchos Rechulis, shenuchal lo moedas medina Yisurei Lashon Hara." So the truth is that many of the halachas can be learned from the halachas of Yisur Lashon. However, Mati says, I said, it's still necessary to review, to go back and say each halacha specifically by Rechulis, so first of all, because of the tremendous stumbling block this Chet Haloshan is, in this opinion, and can't rely on the person who's learning the halacha shekashiyet tzarich leisa davar lamaisa. Then when he'll need something halacha lamaisa, chapes no more davar mitoch davar. He'll go back and open up the Hilchos Lashon Hara and say, okay, it says this here. How does it apply to Rechulis? He said you can't rely that person's going to do that with kula hay v'ulay. Also, gam shekemat b'choinin bein yeshes establish is in every halacha and every concept. When he's talking about Rechilas, there is something new also. That we wouldn't be able to learn from Hilchos Lashon. Chazal taught us in a similar thing. Kol parsha shenemar v'nishnes. Any parsha in the Chumash that's said and then repeated, like nishnes, it was rewritten because there's always some new halacha that wasn't in the first parsha. So the simile here, he's saying, besides the fact that it's so rampant, the transgression of this Avera, we can't rely on the fact that someone learning Hilchos Rechulis will go back to the Hilchos Lashon Hara to see how it applies. Number two, there's always something new. Okay, so the Sefer Chafetz Chaim is split up in two parts, and then in parentheses, he writes, Kasha Yizakeni Ha'elyon, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives me the ability, we'll write a third chelik to this sefer. Not a halacha sefer, but more of a mussar sefer, where he'll gather all the statements in the Gemara and the Midrashim and the Zohar that are applicable to this. By learning those Maimarim, there'll be clarified the Schadr is in this world and the next world. The Mishnah is about the Goydel Oida should be Shaivos. And the tremendous punishment is for someone who transgression, and that will be his Cyrus to be Kiborkiv. Achake. As a Chavetz Chaim, after I wrote these two Svarim, Hilchos Chavetz Lashon Horah and Rechulis, he says, I split the Sefer into two, rather, 1 minute, the Klolim. It's broken up into Klolim. B'chol klal the Kamasifim, and each klal has a subdivisions, have Seifim. So it should be easy for you to read it. And in almost every cloud, he gave us some examples. Today, Shemimeni is finding on Kairos, so the one learning the Sefer will be able to understand Cross Shema Sefer Chafetz Chaim. The name of the Sefer, the general name of the Sefer is called Chafetz Chaim Hashem HaKosav, based on the pasuk Mio Isha Chafetz Chaim b'chulu. However, shall Yoku Takar B'Kriyosei, Kodinu Makari Makas Reva Ritash Nimtzu B'Eilafa. That shouldn't be. You shouldn't get stuck, because of all the halachas and the sources that many times may be extensive. I so I broke the Sefer up into two parts. Haprim, that's like the top, the actual halacha, b'kitzur, hayetzes achabir kol advarim. The halacha that is clarified after he learned all the relevant sources. Yikar b'shem mekor chayim. That's called the source of the chayim. Because the ability of a person to speak that comes from the fact that he's an nefesh chaya, shaboy, it says, very famous pasuk in Bereshis, and Targum Onkelos says, what does it mean? To a speaking, the ability to speak. And then around the Makor Chaim, which is the top of the Sefer, there's an explanation, like the Bir Halacha and Mishnah Berurah, b'shem Be'er Mayim Chaim. You have Be'er, because that is the Be'er Mayim Chaim is where he drew. It's the well that he drew. Shadalisi Mimenes Makor Chaim Apnimi. He drew the Makor Chaim. He says, please know, Shafil Kodava Posh Nimtza B'fnim, that even the simple halachas that are written, Haresius Makar B'Mer Chaim, I've showed you the source. The manivar le'inei akol, so it should be clear. No one can argue. The Sefer is the loichi about the Pimidas Chasidus Rakat Adin. That I wrote the Sefer, there are people who say, oh, that's just Midas Chasidus. It's not really the halach. Right? Because that's one of the arguments the Yitzhak could do to you. So he says, therefore, even the most simple halachas, I showed you the source. For that halach, it should be clear that we're writing halachas. Okay, that's Sefer Chafetz Chaim and Ashmir's halach. That reminds me, it's really not so sure, but that reminds me, I remember when I was in Ar David, there was a very famous tshuva for Ramesha Feinstein, still is, where a bacher writes to Ramesha Feinstein about having a girlfriend. And he writes that he doesn't want to hear any Midas Chasidus. He wants to hear the halacha. No Frumkai. That's what he writes in his Shailat to Ramesha. So, what's Chaim here is saying a person may feel that some of the halachas is a Midas Chasidus. He's therefore going to source you all the halachas. It's clear that we're talking halacha and not Midas Chasidus.
I'd like to meet this guy.
Yeah, I wonder where. Must be a grandfather by now.
Right, just the guts it took to write like that.
Okay, he must have learned him or something one time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Listen, he mostly was a yeshiva guy, and he got a lot of flack from his rebbeim, about this. And he was a little tired of it, and then he wanted to hear what's the halacha. Don't give me musa, don't give me midas chasidus. Just tell me what the halacha is. By the way, Ramesha said it's not much, in case you were wondering.
He said what?
It's not mutter to have a girlfriend. It's
You
not mutter to have a girlfriend.
Well, it depends.
Okay,
Depends how
there
often
you
they
go.
see each other.
All
But
right.
I applaud Rav Moshe for entertaining the Shaila. You know,
Listen,
it keep the lines of communication open.
yeah, good.
No judgment here. It's us, sir. Okay, next.
Did we freeze? No?
I'm here.
You're here? Okay.
Yeah,
All
sorry
right.
I'm late.
I missed after what you said. It says my connection's unstable. Okay.
I appreciate that Rav Moshe welcomed the Shaila and didn't make him feel like a total loser. And it's good
Right.
to keep the lines of communication open. The fact that he
Yeah.
addressed it and put it in the book speaks volumes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, did Ramosha put it in the book, or whoever puts these things together?
Well, it was in an earlier truva, so it was while he was alive. So he most probably, shared his truvas with I don't know, whoever was active.
Yeah, no, Ramosha, I think Ramosha Ramosha printed the truths. What they printed a bunch afterwards, after he passed away. It's some that he may not have wanted to be
Right, right,
printed, but not
right, right. Okay, let's search for his halash. So we're at Shara Torah Perik Zayin Shnas Pshuta Chof Nisan, where he's discussing the importance and the chiyuv to raise your children to learn Torah. And Va'atan Espoine, and he says, let's look. V'nikach Musa Midaris Harishan. Shmiras Halash is a Musa Sefer. He said that already. Dakdam. Okay. Let us look. Let's take Musa from the earlier generation. Shahoyu Faneinu Zekama Me'ashanim. Over hundreds of years before us. Like in the time of the Marshal and the Marshal, Maram Shif, the Yeshua, Vitzlach. Shekulam Rashi Mesivtos, they were all heads of yeshivas. Shenosnos B'neim Lebeis HaSefer. That they sent their children to learn. If they didn't have the ability to hire a private rebbe for their son, they took him and put him in yeshiva until he was an adult. He says, do you think? Because one of the arguments that people want to say is, oh, well, my son's not going to be a rabbi, so he doesn't have to learn so much. Which the Chavetz Chaim said that's false. So he's saying here, do you think that every father thought his son's going to be a paisik? Well, you do, Mashamu Chazal. It's known what Chazal teaches in Koheles. On the pasuk Adam Echad Me'elef Matzasi, I found one from 1,000. Shelf the Pasim Lemikra, 1,000 go to learn Mikra Chumash, Mehem Yitzim Meya Balei Mishnah. And then from that 1,000, come out 100 that learn Mishnah. Mehem Asar Balei Talmud. Mehem Yitzim Echad Arayli Kari Ish Laharis Harab Yisrael. So 1 out of 1,000, says the Medrash, results in being a Rav and a Paisik. And that was a Barakachu. He says, but it's clear, Ha'ov Shanasan Dwele Beis HaSefer Yeshiva, the father. He's saying this was a given hundreds of years ago, right? That people did this. The father who sent his son to the yeshiva, what was he thinking? Imi Zakeni Hashem, Sheetz B'nei Baal Talmud, if I merit that my son does end up being that number, that one of the 1,000, he ends up being a Baal Talmud and fitting to Paskin, how lucky I'll be. But if I don't, so at least let him know Gemara, or Yalkopar and believe in Mishnayos. Well, at least he should be from those 100 that learn Mishnayos. Because when Akash Baruch Hu then will merit him and he'll have a business, is SGL or whatever it might be, Bevadai Yikva al Kopanim is a sheer Kavur B'Yam Limud B'Gemara B'Mishnayos. Oya Kopanim Agoras Chazal. He'll certainly, this child, when he grows up and goes into business, he'll certainly make sure to have a regular set shear, whether it's learn Gemara or Mishnayos, or at least Agodas, Chazal, Bafim Chas V'Shalom La'il or Shum Kunai Bin Moisachol. And even if it should turn out that he has no extra time, he has no time free during the week, I'll call upon Shabbos Kodesh. At least on Shabbos Kodesh, Ravadi comes to Beis HaMedrash. He'll go to the Beis HaMedrash Yom Days to Dape Gemara or Mishnayos. He'll learn some Gemara Mishnayos. Val Zeh Gamken Kedayuli. The father, he's telling you what the father's thinking a few hundred years ago. And all of that, Kedai for me, Kol HaKoich Shamati, of all the koyach I put into the kid, Bein B'chai, Bein B'moisi, both when I'm alive and after when I die, Kiddush Ben Halim Mitar Mezakal Over Mitzir Megehenna. Son who learns Torah merits the father and takes him out of Gehenna, Megam Ihu Gan Eden, and even if the father's in Gan Eden, Zoichel is Al Yodai Ukanal. So it was Kedai. Everything you invested in your children, both in this world and both in the next world, even if they don't end up being a Rosh Hashiva or a Rav. Okay. We'll continue tomorrow.